Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, March 10th, 2020. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Miller,
Here.
Rosato,
Here.
Beck, Knopf,
Here.
Chanzit, Barron, Wolf,
Here.
O'Brien,
Here.
Callahan,
Here.
Meitzler,
Here.
Malay,
Here.
Ewer,
Here.
Cerrone,
Here.
and McFadden.
Here.
We have the necessary quorum. I did receive a message from Alderman Barron. She will be here a little bit late, so around 7:30 she'll be here. Next up is the reminder to please speak directly into the microphone for the BATV recording and broadcast. The next thing would be to approve the minutes from February 18th of 2020 and to turn down all phones and electronic equipment. Anybody care to make a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay, motion by Knopp, second by Malay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next thing up would be items removed, added, or changed. I don't believe we have any tonight. Anybody? Okay. Next up would be matters from the public for items not on the agenda. Anybody out there? Okay. Next up would be the consent agenda. And Alderman Chanzit is not here. I'll just go ahead and read that. Would be A, Resolution 20-39-R, approval of the 2020 zoning map. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion by McFadden, second by Malay. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, then we will go right on into motion to terminate the public hearing for establishment of Special Service Area 42 for the Nagel Industrial PUD Farmstead 3 development. Can I get a motion to
So
terminate?
moved.
Second.
Motion by Malay, second by Callahan. Discussion? You need to say anything, Scott, for this, or?
No, after further discussion and there has not been a withdrawal of the formal objection to the special service area, we feel that it would be appropriate this time to terminate the proceedings.
And that'll be the next item agenda?
Next item as well, right.
As well, okay. All right, so we have a motion to terminate that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that motion carries. And then we will remove item 8.
Nope.
No,
Still got to vote on it. Vote to deny.
Oh, to rescind it.
Yeah.
To rescind the other one. Okay. Go ahead, Alderman Callahan.
Yeah, this has been from the ordinance 19-80, where we proposed the establishment of the SSA 42 back in November. We just terminated the public hearing. It was continued several times. There is an objection filed by the property owners, and staff feels the proposed SSA should be retracted at this time. So this vote would be to approve the rescinding of the old ordinance in November. Scott, is there anything else you want to add? No, there's not. With that, I move we approve ordinance 20-23, rescinding ordinance 19-80, proposing SSA 42 for the Nagel Industrial Park PUD Farmstead 3 development.
Second.
Motion by Callahan, second by Elliott. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
It was just like,
we can just do consent on that, right?
And that can just go on consent.
yes.
Next up will be Resolution 20-44-R, authorizing execution of contract with Denler Incorporated for the 2020 crack filling and parking lot maintenance program. And Rahada's up here, and he can explain this again to us, our simple maintenance items.
Yeah, this is our yearly maintenance program. I'm hoping that by now all of you have noticed that we crack fill all our streets in the city. We have been doing that for last 5 years. It's a pretty effective and low cost maintenance to extend the life of the streets. So this year we opened the bid, and to our surprise, we found that the unit price of crack fill has gone down. Typically, there are only 2 contractors for this contract throughout the Chicagoland. So we are very happy to see that. And every year, because we didn't really have an active crack filling program before, so every year we try to push the limit and do more and more streets as we can. So we are asking the city council to award the entire amount. Typically, we come with 10% contingency, but in this case, we are asking you to award it with 13% contingency so that we can take the streets that got dropped off from this year list, because we thought the price would be higher to crack fill those streets. It's a good bang for the money. So,
Does anybody have any questions? Marty?
With the seal coating on it, I've noticed Millview I think that was just done last year. It's really bumpy this year, pretty much the whole way down. Is there any reason for that, or will it just wear down?
Typically, over the time, it wears down. Last year, the contractor that did it, they used a different type of tip than the previous contractors did, which is the same contractor is going to do this year. We have talked to him whether he can modify that tip, how he puts down the crack fill so that it's not that bumpy. But typically, over the winter months, when we plow snow, it gets kind of shaved up and smoothed out, but we didn't snowplow that much this year, so it still feels a little bumpy for that reason.
Right, I just noticed it. I mean, I've been on lots of crack fill streets before.
Yeah,
I just didn't notice it as much as I had Millview right by the high school.
Yeah, we talked to the contractor last year because I drive Pine Street every day when I come to the office and go back. It's also bumpy.
Okay.
But it's not really the bad thing, but we talked to him last year that can you change the tip of that crack fill so that it's not as bumpy.
I was going to say, I noticed the past couple of years, it seems like it's gotten thicker and thicker and thicker at each application. Like the stuff that they're using now, it just seems like it's a lot thicker.
Right.
Coating that they put on.
So one of the things he told us that, and I can't tell whether it's true, he said he uses the right amount of fiber, so they mix a fiber to it.
Mm-hmm.
He claims that he uses the right amount of fiber and that's why it's bumpy. And the other contractor didn't use the right amount of fiber. So we do track the fiber too, I mean, they give us, there is no good way of tracking the amount of fiber they mix because they mix it off-site, but they give us the boxes, which we count and we kind of match it that it should be 8%. But, the boxes can be empty and fiber could be sitting somewhere. So that's always been a struggle for last 15, 20 years that I have been doing it. So, but we did talk to him about changing the tip so that it's not as bumpy.
So how long does the life of the roadway extend? How long is that?
There have been research that if you do periodic crack fill, they suggest that if you do every 3 years, it will extend the pavement anywhere between 5 to 7 years. So if you are expecting 20 years, then you will not only get the 20, you will go to 25.
20 is kind of high though, right?
20 is high.
Generally, it's anywhere from 12 to 15 or something. But
Again, no.
If it extends it, that's a good thing.
20 is probably not that incorrect, but if you think about it, a lot of these streets that we have in the city, they were built long time back, and they have only 3 inches of asphalt in it. They talk about 20 when you have really 6, 8 inches of asphalt sitting on a nice base, So 20 is like if you build a street today and like Main Street, that you'll probably get a 20-year life out of it because that is getting built with 8 inches of asphalt. But the Main Street that we have today, that was built with only 2 to 3 inches of asphalt. So you don't get that same amount of life.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Not, I'll make the motion that we recommend the city council execution of a contract with Denler Incorporated for the 2020 crack filling and parking lot maintenance program.
Second.
Motion by Wolf, second by Ewer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That one can go on consent. Next up will be Resolution 20-45-R, authorizing execution of contract with Strata Construction for the 2020 sidewalk and curb replacement program.
Again, this is a yearly program that we do. Every year on Halloween, we cut off our call-in date. Residents do call us throughout the year saying, I have a broken sidewalk or I have a defective sidewalk. And we keep a list, and normally on Halloween day, we cut it off. Every year we generate a pretty big, hefty list, and this year also we had a big list. But we were also tracking how the unit prices are throughout the Chicagoland. We saw, pretty high prices. I wish today or a couple of days ago, I was wishing that we didn't go out with the contract that early. Maybe go now, maybe get a better price. But back then, the prices were tracking higher, so we kind of reprioritized our program, took out some of the locations from the list, and then bid it out. So like the crack fill program, we would like you to award it to the budgeted amount, which is $125,000, so that we can get more work done this year rather than deferring it to next year.
Anybody have any questions?
Is there any curb work being done?
Little bit, not that much.
Okay, just
Only if,
patching?
if there is a curb work done, there will be patches.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm very happy that we're not cutting the sidewalks off of the list. We're able to add more to it because the prices are lower. For a long time, that didn't happen, so anytime we get more than we expect, that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have any questions? I'll make the motion that we recommend a council resolution 20-45-R, authorize the execution of a contract with Strata Construction for the 2020 sidewalk and curb replacement program.
Second.
Motion by Wolf, second by O'Brien. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That one can go on consent. Okay. Next up will be Resolution 20-46-R, approving change order number 1 for MP Systems in the amount of $40,023.95 to complete substation construction services for the Northeast Distribution Substation.
That'll be
Alderman
me.
O'Brien?
So we have a change order on a not-to-exceed price, and as Alderman Wolf said, it's just to drill some holes, and there's a few other things in here that really didn't get listed for pricing, correct?
Yes, that is correct. I mean, the drilling the holes were kind of not included in this contract, was not included in this contract, but we found out that that MP system could do the work, and they proposed a price, and we thought it's a good price, so we kind of did that work through this contract. So that's totally outside scope of services. Dewatering, if you remember, last year we had quite a bit of rain, and that caused a lot of dewatering issue for the contractor. So they had to have people out and pumps out there to dewater. And in their contract, actually, they listed that if they face any watering issue, then there will be an extra time and material cost. So we negotiated that price down than what you are seeing in this change order. And then there are other items, as you mentioned, some items go up and down. So we have this $40,023.95 change order in front of you.
Any questions, concerns, or anything for Rahat?
This was over $1 million contract.
Right.
So $43,000 change is not a huge change.
No, it's not huge at all. But it was a not-to-exceed
Right.
thing, and so
Mhm.
I have a couple of concerns. This isn't their first rodeo, right? They've installed these before? The contractor? And whoever designed it before, so why did they leave out these weep holes?
Oh, this, okay, so that's totally separate. So the weep holes that we are talking about, those is a best practice nowadays. So we are forget about this contract. So Northeast and Southeast Sub, all the buses and that we have, the connection, the grease gets out and ultimately they snap. So in last 10 years or so, the industry figured out if we do a weep hole and let the water out, then we don't have those freeze and thaw issue and ultimately the snapping of those connections. So we have been talking about doing that, but we didn't really find a contractor who will just come to do that work. So that is on the existing substations we are talking about.
Okay, and how old are those substations? They're old.
2007
Okay,
or so.
that
Yeah.
clears it up, thank
Right.
you. I was gonna say, well, I mean,
No.
you know, weep holes in a masonry
No.
building are important, that's
So-
easy to leave out.
So one of the things, sorry to add, but so this contract had one weep-hole provision in the contract that kind of initiated that, okay, we should do
Okay.
the other ones. at the
Perfect,
same
thank
time.
you. I appreciate that, believe me. And to dewatering, there were 240 hours for dewatering. I mean, that's 6 weeks of a guy running a pump. That seems excessive to me. I mean, because this is what I do too, you know what I mean?
I know.
I mean, I just think it was excessive.
It's the
So-
type of sand that we have under the or in the substation that kind of like holds a lot of water. It doesn't let it out. They claimed 480. Then we kind of went through our books and notes and say when they were there and when they did. So it's a negotiated down
Okay,
hours.
and I get that, but
But-
you understand what I'm saying. I mean, when people dewater a site, I mean, I just built a building that is 4 times bigger than that, okay? And we had excavations we had to dewater. We did it in a day. It's one guy putting a pump in the water, plugging it in, and going doing what else he does. And then he comes back and checks it. I mean, it just seemed a lot. So if you got them down from 480 to 240, that to me raises a red flag that they were that high and they negotiated down half of their hours.
And the reason that negotiated down is because in the contract we told them that they have to notify anytime. Not that. Let me take it back. We said when you dewater, you didn't tell us that you are dewatering. That was the basis of our negotiated down. But they did dewater. I mean, we can't just.
And there was
claim that
somebody,
dewatering.
paying attention and documenting the
Right,
hours that they
right,
were
right.
working on it.
Right. And
And who was
they-
that?
Our consultant, PSE, but they were not there on the site every day. So we have some documentation saying when they were there, but the other days they're claiming, we said, you didn't call anybody in the city or our consultant to
Right,
tell us
yeah.
that you were dewatering, so I can't pay you for those hours. And I think on a hindsight, maybe, and we talked about it too, that on a hindsight, during the winter months, they don't expect it to be raining, so we had some rains in January and February. They expect it to be snowing, but they didn't expect it to be raining. So we could have, on a hindsight, we could have suspended the project saying, let's not work now, but come back again in March or April. On a hindsight, we could have done that, but
Yeah.
we
Well, you can make an allowance, put an allowance in the contract too for doing that. But anyway, I just was wondering how you're going to respond to 240 hours.
No,
It just seems like an awful lot to
no,
me.
it's a valid question. It's
So, anybody else have anything? I mean, we got to pay them because you negotiated it down, right? We can't vote and say we're not paying. I mean, that's not a good thing for us to do either.
yeah. I mean, sorry.
I have a question. No, the original quote, what was the difference between the first bidder and the second? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I think we can probably pull up the agenda item, or I can try to find. It's 18. Sorry,
I didn't look
1898.
myself, so I can't be upset. I'm just,
I think it was in. Sorry, I had it open.
I remember there was quite a bit of spread between them.
I thought so too. And so that's why I didn't, when I saw this, it didn't raise a red flag. But then when you put 480, those hours.
240 hours, I mean, that's
they're
a guy
like-
working
It seems like
full-time
somebody's
for 6 weeks.
trying to
It's a lot of rain.
finagle a little extra in there. I just don't want to reward somebody in the future that gives
Exactly.
a low quote and then comes back with extras.
I think Rahat may have gotten that message now. so.
Right.
Go ahead, Marty.
Well, I mean, I appreciate.
No, I mean, it was, and electric world, as you all know, is kind of newer to me. In civil side, we are so used to having one contractor, like, Main Street. It's the one guy, he's the general contractor, 6.9 million. You control your sub, we don't. Electric seems like you can do it, but you pay way lot more money if you want to do it that way. But I think you had that discussion with Gary a few weeks ago, that here we chop up the contract like in many different pieces, and everything goes out at different times, and you are managing
Yes,
different.
absolutely. I mean, that's what we did discuss. Gary said that contract for the Northeast substation is coming in $1 million here, $2 million here, building the transformers, and it got broken out into various pieces. But that doesn't explain 240 hours of.
No,
work.
I'm not.
That's all we're getting at, is that just seemed excessive. So now you know to keep an eye on it, that
Right, and
we zero in on that.
so, sorry, my point was, it seems like there is no, like, one spec. Like, you say, I want a switch gear. Now, every manufacturer has switch gear, but they're all different spec.
Right.
So there is we go through a life cycle cost analysis, saying, okay, the switch gear may cost us $500,000 right now, but how frequently you have to do maintenance and how much it costs. Somebody might say you have to do it every year. Somebody says every 5 years. Somebody says, you never have to do any maintenance, but it's going to cost you $1 million. So there are all these small things that you kind of have to do whole life cycle cost analysis. Now this contract, he had the dewatering, even though dewatering was not a pay item. We didn't put it as a pay item. But when he bid on the project, he added a line saying dewatering, time and material. And he said that if you want to accept my contract, remember that these are the extra things that you need to pay me for. So that's kind of different than how civil and other things work. So I'm
Right.
kind of learning, and I think we'll definitely try
It
to
just,
not.
and I get that time and material, because you don't know how much it's going to rain. That's why you give allowances. But you got to make sure that someone's watching them.
Right.
That, just because he has a pump running for 8 hours doesn't mean you have a laborer
Right.
watching that pump for 8 hours.
Right.
He plugged it in, he checked it once, a couple of hours later, made sure it was running
Still
correctly, and went and did what laborers do. So we shouldn't have to pay twice. And that's what we'd be doing, while if we're paying him to just watch it and do what laborers are doing. So that's all I'm getting at. So, Marty?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the information on this, because I think it's a little enlightening, especially from the fact that this is a not to exceed when it was passed. And I kind of go into your point about what does that set what if we put on and pass not to exceeds and then exceed them all the time? And that's where I'm concerned with you, with what you're saying about all of a sudden it became 240 hours later instead of 24 hours later, we're going to need more time. Why was it allowed to go past a reasonable time to what, taking your word as it's your line of business, someone should have caught it before 240 hours went by?
Mike?
Elliot?
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. There were two things, and maybe I've just had a very long day, but there were two things that have been said here that just kind of rubbed me. Number one is, well, they did the work, we got to pay them. I agree people should be paid for the work they did, but if we're just going to proceed with change orders and because we owe them, then why do we even need to take a vote? That seems silly to me, where they're, like you said, they're not to exceed for a reason. It should not be assumed that change orders are going to get paid. That's why they have to come for approval or rejection. The second thing is here, dismissing the fact that it's $40,000. I understand by comparison of $1 million, but this is an unbudgeted item. We always come to the budget season and say, how come we don't make a bigger deal about the 40,000 here or there or there or there? Let's not dismiss the fact this is an unbudgeted item that we may be coming to the end of the year and then seeing a budget amendment for. Let's not just gloss that over.
Good point.
Two things I'll say.
Alan.
One is out of the electric utility, so it's not out of the general fund budget. And second, Nick, we did find the numbers from the bids on that. MP Systems was $1,034,000. The next one was $1,007,000, and the third one was $2.1 million. So the differences were pretty big on those.
Were considerable, right.
And thank you for bringing that up. And that those are the things that we look at when we award the bid, that who is the lowest bidder, but what are the adder that they are adding, and we are also kind of taking a chance that maybe they will have to pay a little bit more to them to give them the project.
You know, Rahat, and I understand that, believe me, I understand that. And I honestly believe if people do the work and they live up to their contract, they need to be paid. I mean, that's just the way of the world. But it just seems still excessive. So if you're saying that it was time was documented, then we need to pay them because time was documented. But maybe in the future is all I'm getting at, in the future, so we don't, to Elliot's point, you know, wow, it's 240 hours. And you must have really had to pick yourself up when they originally said 480 hours. I mean, that's 12 weeks, you know, of just some guy running a pump for 12 straight weeks. So it just, maybe we can put an allowance in there, and then they have to work within that allowance, and then we know exactly where it's going. You know, there's no surprises then.
So typically, let's say we added that as a line item, we'll call dewatering, and we'll probably estimate as engineers, we'll estimate 40 hours.
Right.
But if they really did 240 hours, then we'll be paying them for that because that was necessary to do the work. In this case, it was not a line item, but they did add it as a line item saying, you will have to pay me for this work at this rate. So it was not included in the bid price,
I get
you know,
Yeah.
so
I think we all understand that.
So-
It just seems pretty excessive. And so, again, I'm going to say, you know, you can have an allowance, that you can't exceed the allowance. And if they're going to go over it, then they have to come to a hat and say, hey, you know what? We're running out of hours on dewatering. It keeps raining. What do we do? And you can say, and we would trust you to say, go ahead and do it. And you make sure that they
Right.
keep their hours. It just seems like their hours kind of got run wild. And no one watched it as tight, perhaps, as they should have, is all I'm getting at.
yeah, I mean, we had so much disagreement on this
Right.
hours. We had long discussion with the contractor. They even went away because they didn't like when we told them that
Sorry.
I'm not paying you because nobody knew you were here. They had a key to the substation. They could come and go, you know, and
I have a question. Just what was the total amount of hours that they were at the job? I mean, were they there for 18 weeks? And 6
No.
weeks of it was dewatering?
no,
And
they
that's-
started in 2018 November, December. So it's
It was
been going
a
on
while.
for
So it's
now.
been that long, so it's over a year.
Yeah, it's
Of
a
total
14
time that
months.
they were working in there, so 20 months. So
Yeah, I
if
mean,
you
they
spread
pretty-
that out over 20 months and think about how much rain we've had in the last 20 months, maybe that's not that crazy that they
Oh.
had to do that.
Depends on the size of the building, too, how much water accumulated. So, I mean, I'm going to approve it. I'm not going to go against you or how I'm going to support you, but just future, just keep an eye, that's all, you know? So does anyone have anything else? I didn't mean to make
have
a
one
long
question.
discussion. Yes, please.
What were
Tina.
the number of hours that the consultant logged? 'Cause didn't you say that they had to, the consultant wrote down what number of hours? Do you remember, do you know what those were?
I believe they logged like 190 hours or
Okay,
so.
that the consultant actually
Yeah, it
saw.
actually saw. So
So he was right there. And
Negotiate.
there's always going to be time that slips by, absolutely. You know, that's reasonable. So he's not going to be there every minute watching them.
Right.
So, anybody else? Anyone care to make a motion? I'll make a motion. We recommend the city council passage of resolution 20-046-R.
Second.
Motion by O'Brien, second by Cerrone. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. That'll make it 12 to 1.
13 to 1.
No,
We don't have
Dan's not.
Dan Chanzit.
Okay, I'm sorry. So it would make 13 total. That's right.
All right, Rod, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up will be a discussion on downtown streetscape. Abby?
So this is the continuation of the conversation we had on February 11th, where we presented back the results of our discussions on the downtown redevelopment plan and the streetscapes plan, where we came back with a number of short-term, mid-term, long-term suggestions. The one that we discussed the most was the formation of a streetscape advisory committee that could help run with ideas that are brought up during council or from the community, and address some of the low-hanging fruit and continue to make this topic something that's brought before us on a regular basis so that we can push things forward. And we decided to give it a couple weeks. I sent out the presentation for you all to review and stew on, as you will, and come back and give some feedback on how we move forward from here. Who wants to go first?
I think a smaller committee is a good idea for that, so that way we can kind of steer things and not just let it languish out there, especially if small things come up. I think it's easier for a small group to say, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's look at how we could implement this and then bring that back to the council. So I think that's a good idea. Just going to take a couple people to step forward.
I told you, Abby, I'd like to be on that committee. I'd like to participate in that. Everyone, I think, knows how I feel. I think streetscapes are going to be the very important for our city. They're going to be an economic engine, as River Street, I believe, is, and Houston Street, and I think it's something we need to be looking into, and not just talking about it, but start trying to plan how we're going to actually accomplish this. So I appreciate you keep pushing that and bringing it forward.
Alan?
Your Honor?
Yeah, I certainly turn in on the idea that this is a good idea. I have no problems with that. I guess my only concern would be where we're going to get the money. I don't think we have that much in this year's budget to do it. You know, what we got, I guess we can try to expend, but I don't know, do we have any idea what this would all cost if we were to implement the whole thing?
Of the projects that we listed in the short and mid, long-term plans, a lot of them had ideas for funding attached to them, fundraising for trees like Geneva does, or applying for grants for smaller projects. But certainly bigger term or bigger projects would be something we'd bring up for future budget discussions.
I only say, I've been spending, I was in Chicago or Oak Brook yesterday for most of the day at the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, and this whole thing about state funding and financing and grants and all this, it is really in a very precarious position right now. And I'm not overly optimistic that we're going to be able to go to the state government and get much, if anything, to do anything with, much this plus anything else that's out there. We had to pass a motion yesterday at the executive board to support the movement to return the state income tax to the cities at a 10% per capita on the state income tax, which now it had been reduced down to about, they think, between 5.5% and 6.5%. That percentage floats around down in Springfield, but it's about half of what it originally started out to be in 1970. And they keep gnawing away at that and taking that away from us, much less giving us anything. So I'm just kind of gun-shy about, anybody coming in with any hopes of spending a lot of money, because it's pretty tight right now, and I certainly detect that the mood of the voters, and we'll probably see some of it next week, is not real supportive of government spending a lot of new money that people would have to cough up with to do right now. It's a tight time.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just respond to that then, and just say, I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I think to Abby's point, we're looking just to do maybe some tree planting, which isn't a lot of money, and it's just something that just gets things moving forward. As far as a complete streetscape, that's not going to happen this year or next year, probably. We're going to have to start thinking about it and thinking of how to raise funds to generate funds to do that.
I'm all for it, what Abby and her committee are trying to do. I'm not at all. I just need to caution us that, the idea, a mayor said yesterday that he's really getting upset in his town. Everybody tells him, well, apply for a grant, go to Springfield or go to Washington. And he says, I'd like to take the word grant right out of the dictionary and the vocabulary, because he says that's a disappearing movement at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's why I think when a lot of us first started these discussions are based in the fact that there's not a lot of money to do things, and the way to take grant out of it is to start identifying those very small projects that don't cost anything, that get put in plans, but then nothing happens to them. And because nothing happens to them, then it gets bundled into the big wow. And those are the missed opportunities that we get a big project, nothing, get a big project, nothing. There has to be the constant momentum moving forward, which then people understand, oh, this is why I'm doing a medium-sized project, a smaller-sized project, a larger-sized project. It keeps that traction going. And those things that I know you've spent so much time looking at and identifying, there are a lot of creative ideas, which is also a credit and a testimony to this community, is those things we need to capitalize on. And it doesn't take money for everything to do it. As we're seeing in many projects in this town, it just takes some desire and dedication, which I know, and I have 100% confidence that you would be able to find those things that get us the biggest ROI.
And Alan made a good point when we discussed this before, too, is when we have the big projects. We've got Prairie Street, we've got Main Street, looking at those small incremental additions that maybe we weren't thinking of because we've got this big reconstruction to focus on. Okay, so now can we add pavers, the paver crosswalks to this intersection, and how much does that little increment add? We're not doing it all from scratch, or extending a sidewalk or planting a few trees, or now's the time to ask, that developer on that corner, it's going to be, taking down everything on this block. Let's talk to them about something on the corner. Could we put some, a piece of artwork on the corner for now and incorporate this into your design in the future? So just, people thinking about that piece of it while we're working on big projects too, I think will be a really good.
I think, as the projects come up, is there something part of the Streetscape program that we can incorporate with this project? I mean, as you mentioned, the street's already going to be torn up. Perfect time to, add those parts to it.
There's some hillsides and brush that need to be cleaned out that doesn't cost anything.
And even the Parkway Tree Program, if we were to go out and really push that with the property owners along those streets that are being redone, try to get them all to buy into that, hey, we're putting $1 million into the street out in front of your house. How about, every other neighbor or something put $150 up towards a tree, and then we all have all new trees down that street when we're done with it.
Well, and I think that's where I mentioned at one of the last things, do the tree, not where it's just in front of your house. Maybe you can't do it in front of your house. Maybe you live in an apartment complex. Where can you put one in town? That's more money that's being spent. You get more return.
Yeah, I think it's, if we add on, like we did the complete streets a few weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, whatever that was, where we need to continue to do that, but then this, it goes back to staff too, to make sure. I'd said it before, we missed a perfect opportunity when we redid the sidewalks on Batavia Avenue a couple of years ago, because we didn't put the trees in when we tore up the sidewalks, and that was something that was part of our streetscape, and we never did it. So we just have to make sure that it's always front of mind that, okay, well, there's complete streets and there's a streetscape. Is this a place for trees? Yes. It costs a little bit more. Complete streets will cost a little bit more, but we always have to remember that these are the things that we want to do to improve the city.
And to your point, some of that was on the library to do.
I'm talking on the other side of the street.
The other side of the street. So, and to your point on that, we also need to make sure, though, that we use the right material. Might cost a little more. Like a clay paver holds up a lot better than a concrete paver, because you got salt on the road, which matriculates over to the sidewalk, and the concrete pavers disintegrate. And so little things like that will go a long way.
Yeah.
So it's good point.
And maybe we get lucky like we did with the pricing, and it's like, oh, we can do a little bit more. So we do a little bit more with the streets this year with the seal coating and maybe a little bit more with the sidewalks because, oh, it's costing a little less for materials. And then to the point with the complete streets, some years we just won't be able to do it. We can't do it every time. Sometimes we just won't have the money to do it. But as long as it's top of mind for everybody, every time a project is coming through, is in the downtown area, that is this something that we're making sure is added.
And maybe right now is the time to do adopt a tree down Main Street, start getting a program going when they, as I think of it, when we had the presentation, had somebody here that was, hey, would you like to adopt a tree, somewhere along that way. Maybe that's something we can do along Prairie Street when we start working on that. Have somebody here and say, hey, would you like to adopt a tree? I like that idea. I signed up for a tree and, maybe a couple years down the road, invest in a tree somewhere else. And then start utilizing some of these local groups, with planters. I know we have people that do it, but, we have a lot of groups that would probably be interested in doing plants and maybe not take away from our staff that works for us down here, but in other locations.
I don't know we'll be taking anything away from them. I think they'd be happy to have someone do it.
I wonder,
Overworked already.
I live by a guy and he loves doing it.
Yeah.
Anna Baker may have a ton of trees in her backyard that
I would like to
need
talk
planting.
to other communities who have those programs and to find out what their experience has been with that and investigate, how they do it and has it been successful or does it really end up falling to the public works people to take care of them anyway. So that's something that we're investigating. So while, of course, the Phase 1 engineering for the Main Street reconstruction was done a seriously long time ago,
Yes,
ago.
it was.
And we have already completed the Phase 1 and Phase 2 engineering for the Prairie Street reconstruction, the first part that we're going to do. We may have an opportunity, and kind of a nice opportunity because it is the eastern gateway to the heart of our downtown, when they do that, the intersection of Wilson and Prairie. That might be a very nice opportunity to look at making an investment in some of the streetscape ideas that you're talking about. But it's also one I think that would come with, that would be some higher ticket items to really make a statement at that intersection that you have entered downtown Batavia.
Laura, I think on Main Street, we have the plans, and the plans were drawn up. We didn't incorporate in the plans a landscape architect. We just did engineered drawings. And so they did the geometrics, the geometry of the street, the turning radiuses, the width, all of that. I don't think it would be at all expensive if we could, talk to somebody and try to get a couple of trees placed on Main Street, and it shouldn't delay anything. Do you know what I mean? It shouldn't delay the process at all, because we're not really touching the engineering of it.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, you mentioned Prairie Street and Wilson, that corner, that's gonna be a really tight corner when you start adding everything in to have the gates and the railroad crossings and everything else, turn lanes and everything else has to be there. So, yeah, that would be a great one to work on, but I don't think there's gonna be a whole lot of room to work in that intersection once that's expanded. But I do think it needs us to look at it, because that's gonna be when we're gonna have to be really careful with, or we will kill the pedestrian access
Right.
in that really weird triangular corner there, the tracks.
So it seems like a committee is generally approved by the group. How do we form the committee? Is it going to be only members of this body? Are we going to pick external members of the community to sit on it too? How do we do that?
I would recommend that there be a staff liaison as part of that committee so that we would be able to offer the information that might only be archived and known by staff members.
Maybe get Main Street. I wouldn't get too wild on the number of participants, because then it just gets to be hard to come to arrive at any decision. So, but Main Street, because Main Street then can at least, they can probably poll their people and then deliver information to their people.
I like the idea of having Main Street. I think that'd be good, with just one person from Main Street be able to be there to get information in and out from the businesses downtown.
Yeah.
I think somebody from Bike and Environmental, just somebody on there to get their input. And that's where you don't need you don't need 3 from each committee to be a part, just because it's all going to get brought back to their respective anyways.
Nick, did you have an idea?
Yeah, I don't think there's a wrong answer until you try it, but, we brought up the concept of, involving people for a donate a tree or, whatever it was, like getting outside might be a good idea. So I don't know what the right number is, but those are good ideas. But to get a couple people that aren't involved and can take on some of that stuff wouldn't be a bad idea either. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to any of this. It's more who wants to take it on and is willing to.
Yeah, I think if you're willing to shepherd it, Abby, I think you can kind of decide.
We got our
I'd say
winner.
not-
We got our winner.
I wouldn't go more than like 5 or 6 people on it, honestly, because that's going to be too hard to try to manage that. But if you were to keep it within that, I think that would be okay with the rest of us. I don't want to speak for everybody, but
Yeah, when we did the streetscape for River Street, I mean, there was like 15 people. And and they were all people looking to contribute and be a part of it. But we at least then had a project we were working on.
I think we've learned 14 and over is way too many people.
The branding
10
committee
and
had
over.
20 people. That worked out
8
terrible.
to 10.
how long did that take? And what can
That's
the
not to
brand-
say, though, that for a larger project, you couldn't get more people.
Right.
But a lot of the heavy lifting, a lot of the framework has already been done. I mean, you took on a whole lot of this already with identifying it. Now it's just the implementation. So it's,
I mean, I really just
core 5-10
set
people.
up meetings, everybody down.
Right, this isn't a thing about consensus, right?
Exactly.
Design.
And this is
It's
identifying
about
things and bringing ideas back
implementation.
and saying,
There you go.
hey, this is what we've identified, now we got to figure out how to
The more
fund
the
it and
better.
who's going to do it.
I think just Abby could probably.
No.
Right on your back.
Not with her other projects going on.
She has to recuse herself from something when she's sitting in the
Doing
audience.
in the audience.
That's when you get it all
That's
done.
when she just sits there and works. 10 minutes.
Is there a specific charge for the, once a committee is established, what do we do first?
We'll figure that out when we get it established.
Okay. Is it a block by block? Do you think it'll be a block by block thing? Do we just have a theme thing? Again, we can wait till we get established.
And I
I
think,
mean,
Have
maybe
something
look
to
at
pitch
some
to
of the-
people too.
Yeah, look at some of the current projects that are going on.
yeah, and identify, figure out what projects you think are, most pressing or the easiest to solve or easiest to tackle, and maybe pick out 5 of those for the first year.
I agree with that. I think it would be
Yep.
project-based for a little while.
Right.
Then you can start eating the elephant slowly.
Right. And you identify then the bigger picture and say, okay, here's a big chunk of the picture. For the next 5 years, we need to look at how are we going to get to that.
And maybe there's somebody from the community that's already been thinking about this that will come in with a plan.
Anybody, or here's anybody super interested?
Anybody that's not a keyboard warrior. Okay. I knew everybody would love that. I'm waiting to use that one.
I was just telling somebody at a meeting last night too, once you stop following some of those groups, all of a sudden your world is so much more.
Yep.
Everybody's
It is.
happy in your life.
At least one day a week, you just need to shut it off and leave it alone.
It works.
One
Scott?
more week.
Yeah, just two other comments on the presentation from before. One is the parking minimums, maximums, and downtown parking. That is something that staff is working on. We've worked with Abby. We just haven't had a chance to finalize that, but we are planning on getting that done relatively soon and then present that to the committee for some additional thoughts and consideration. So that is something that's while it says it's midterm, that's more of an immediate thing. And then the other thing is the rezoning of South River Street. That's something that, we had looked at internally a few years ago. And we do think that's an area that, needs more attention. And so we would really like to proceed with something in regards to, talking about that and trying to figure out what we can do to upgrade that area in some form or fashion. So that is something that, we definitely are interested in.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Thanks for the update.
Yeah.
Good luck on putting that together, and look forward to hearing what's going on. What's next? Okay. Next up will be annual reports with community development, economic development.
I like the screen that we have here now. Now I don't have to try and take my glasses on and off and everything anymore, so it's much easier.
And you've got the
so.
monitor right in front of you.
That's what I'm
too.
saying. I can now see this, right in front of my
Everything's
face, so.
just been clear.
So this is our community development annual report. Thank you for the time to give you some information. I'll start out with the strategic plan goals. We had 3 goals that were directly responsible for the community development department this year, or this go-around. First was the development plan for downtown. Abby kind of just, stole my thunder a little bit about that. This is kind of what we were doing with looking at the downtown plans, as well as the comprehensive plan and how we were looking at things. So we've kind of gotten some direction on some of that, but that's going to be something for further discussion and action as we continue looking at some of the recommendations in the committee's report and seeing if there's some other things that we can do in that regard. Process and service quality improvements, that's kind of a continuing thing. We did have all the community development staff have customer service training in spring of 2019. We also have been meeting quarterly to discuss various processes and what kind of improvements can be made to either how we're doing things or forms or, various things that the department does. And that's not just the community development department, but, the other departments that are involved in the development review process as well. So, so we have done some things, including adjusting permitting styles with a couple of different things to make it easier on applicants. So instead of making people submit multiple applications for certain types of applications, just consolidate it under single one because it's much easier that way. We've amended parts of the zoning code to reduce regulations on certain activities. And then we're also working on an online permitting system. We had a little snafu with our Llama system. That is going to be fixed. We have had a teleconference with them, and I think they're coming out sometime in late April, and they're going to be uploading a new system for us, which will help expedite that and move that into the realm. So we'll be able to soon, by the summer, hopefully start take online permit applications for certain types of permits. And then the increasing the public parking downtown, that will be part of our further discussion that we'll have with you guys. We have had some discussions, and I'm not sure that the increase of public parking is necessarily what we'll be looking at. It might be more of maintaining and preserving downtown parking, or maybe moving some of the downtown parking. I think the executive summary is I think that there is more of a location problem than there is a number problem. So that's kind of what we're looking at as part of the plan. Future and ongoing projects, the economic development merger is something we've been working on. We'll continue to work on through the rest of the year. The 2 budgets were merged for this last budget year, and we've been working on various transitional activities where I'm getting a little bit more involved in the economic development things. And then we will be working on trying to hire somebody probably in the 4th quarter of this year for the economic development manager position, and then we'll be transitioning into that situation. We do have the International Council of Shopping Centers show that's usually in fall in Chicago. We do plan on going to that to try and let people know who we are and what we have. Unfortunately, we have a few more vacancies that are
pending. So hopefully we'll be able to find some tenants to fill some of those spaces. It's, continuing problem sometimes, unfortunately, with the economy the way it's been. Building code amendments, we did adopt the 2016 building codes. We're finishing up the review of the other codes and the local amendments. We do anticipate that'll be presented sometime this summer. These were delayed due to a heavy permit load, which I'll talk about in a minute, and due to the need to get the new fire marshal up to speed on the codes, because some of the things were related to things the fire department wanted to have in those codes. Certified local government application, we have been working with the historic preservation to finish up the applications. We did have a few vacancies that we had to have appointed, so we also have the reappointment of some of the sitting members that has to be done. Once we get that done, then we can go ahead and submit that application. So that's kind of like the only thing that's left to finish up with that project. And then land use planning, we did do some various amendments to the land use plan, including the Winding Creek Landmeyer property out by McKee Street. That project has kind of stalled. We think that they're still coming back sometime this month, but as we understand it, there's some contractual issues that they're working on that still may delay that yet. So we'll see how that goes later on in the year. Then we also rezoned several city-owned properties in various quadrants of the city that were closely matching their intended use. And also we rezoned some of the areas being annexed to match more of the comprehensive plan designation that we have. We do anticipate, as time permits, we'll be doing more of these cleanup rezonings in the new year with both city-owned properties as well as some of the newly annexed properties. You recall when we annexed a lot of these annexations, these newly annexed properties, we did the R0 district. Some of those properties make sense to stay in the R0, but some of them should be rezoned to an R1M, R1L, or some other zoning district that makes more sense based on the trend of zoning in that area. Zoning code, we have done various changes to the zoning code over the year. We did various changes that included changes to motor vehicle sales, body art, facilities, electronic menu boards, all of which were in the DMU district, changes to parking requirements in the industrial districts, as well as changes to requirements for accessory structures and various cannabis-related uses, in particular definitions. We were planning for increased permit activity. This year we were much busier than the prior year. We were about 40% greater in number of permits from the prior year. That's a huge amount. A lot of it was, decks, sheds, driveways, siding, but some of them were substantive. We had a lot of townhomes being built. We had new single-family homes being built. So we had a lot more activity. Because of that, we did end up hiring back part-time one of our former staff members to help out with processing permits, just because of the volume that we were involved in, which was immensely helpful. And then we actually did hire an outside contractor to do the Windmill Landings plan review and permit building inspections for that particular project because of the size and complexity of it. We also, the expansion of the rental housing program, because of that activity, we did not really have any activity on that this past year, but we do expect we're going to be moving forward on that this next year. Short-term rentals, that will be coming in front of you shortly. We had direction for the committee to make some changes. We had a text amendment that was approved by the Plan Commission, and that'll be coming forward to you, as well as the other bed and breakfast changes that we had talked about in the prior committee meeting. And then electronic permit we had talked about before. Major accomplishments included merging the ED budget that we talked about. We completed a revised boundary agreement with the Village of Sugar Grove. As part of the island annexations, we annexed actually 73 parcels of land, which included 49 homes during that past year, and then the rest of this year. So that was a pretty intensive activity that we had to do as part of that. And I'll have a map in a minute that'll show you some of these other things. We handled 105 FOIA requests, which is about 25% of all the FOIAs in the city. Approved the MIF subdivision and new spec building at the northeast corner of Verdant and Douglas. Approved a new spec building, industrial building, and code relief for the property at the southwest corner of Fabian Parkway and Lewis Bork Drive. We approved a 2-lot subdivision, industrial subdivision on Nagel Boulevard, which included 2 spec buildings that are under construction. And then, of course, we approved the Raising Cane's 4-lot subdivision and planned development, which involved removing of the Avenue Chevy building and then building of the new Raising Cane's restaurant. Oops. We also continued review inspections of the Windmill Landings project, which I had mentioned before. We did have some minor changes to some of the elevations that we were able to approve as staff. Continued to review and approve permits for the Prairie Commons development. We finished up the first year and a half of our IDA, Illinois Housing Development Authority grant, which was for abandoned housing and cleanup and repair of certain properties. There's a property on Prairie that took a good amount of that money. But we have spent about half of that. We have talked about one other property that we would hope to spend the remainder of that money on, but it's all going to be a timing issue. This grant does end in May 2020 without any ability to extend that. So it was helpful, but hopefully we'll be able to expend all that money. If not, that'll end up going back to IDA. We approved a revised redevelopment agreement, a special service area for the One Washington Place development. We transferred the block grant application program to the engineering division. Most of those grant applications were for road projects, so we felt that it was more appropriate, more efficient for them to handle those. We've been assisting them as necessary because sometimes you have to get, income surveys done as part of that, so we've been helping them with that as necessary. And then we talked about the review of the building codes. We continue to administer the outdoor dining licenses as well as the crime-free housing, the tattoo bodywork licenses in conjunction with the police department. This year we also added a review of video gaming licenses to make sure that facilities are in compliance with the zoning regulations. As you recall, we require conditional uses for video gaming licenses. So we wanted to make sure that community development was involved in that, making sure that those were in compliant before licenses are issued. We completed various updates to the zoning code and zoning map. The Historic Preservation has approved of design guidelines. We anticipate those will probably be done hopefully this spring in front of you for adoption. We completed a new special service area number 65 for the Barkeye Farm subdivision. So it's a dormant special service area for the maintenance of the signs and the detention areas. And then we completed 2 land swaps with the Batavia Park District. One of it was for the City Hall Pike Bond area, and then the other one was for the 2 parking lots, one that is near Andres on South River Street, that the city acquired the parking lot that was owned by the Park District, and then the Park District acquired the property was on the West Side Community Center behind there that was partially city-owned. So they acquired that, and we acquired the other one. So this shows some of the statistical information in a graphic way, just to show you what we've done from 2018 to 2019. So you can see the code enforcement inspections went from around 870 to over 940. We attribute that to our new staff person that's here, so that we've been able to do a lot more inspections and activity. The permits, you can see we went from around 1,800 to around 2,700 permits, so almost 1,000 more permits that we had from last year to this year. That was a lot of additional work, obviously. And then the zoning cases went down slightly. We had about 75, and we down to 71. So still a lot of activity, but just a little bit less than the year before. So this just shows the numbers just statistically. You can see the one thing that we did have go down is the fees collected did go down substantially. The reason for that is because we had a lot of big development fees that came in forward in that prior year, including the Prairie Commons development. So land cash, electric fees. Some of these industrial buildings had electric fees. So some of those fees were in that $3.5 million. So that's why that fee is significantly lower. And then this just shows you the zoning cases that are out there too. So just want to make sure one thing that I didn't, hold on. Yeah, I skipped that. So this just shows you the annexations that we've done since 2014. It's kind of hard to see, but the various colors show what years we've annexed the properties. In 2019, when we did the active annexation activities, this shows we did about 69 parcels during that entire calendar year. And then 2020, we did 4 parcels. So we've kind of put a pause on this at this point because of, we kind of got into some of these larger neighborhoods that have a little more, interaction with some of the property owners. Some of them have more concerns, so we wanted to kind of put that on hold. Plus, we also have some issues with elections and when we can actually annex properties. And now that, we're past the census, the urgency is a little bit off now. So we'll probably be looking to restart this maybe sometime at the end of the year. But, as for now, we're kind of putting a pause on it. If we see people that want to annex, we'll obviously entertain those as they come forward. And then, so for 2020 projects goals, we'll continue working on annexation of the islands later in the year that I had mentioned. Number 2, actually, we got done. The renewing the boundary agreement with Village of North Aurora. They finally passed their version of it, so we've recorded it, so that's actually done, so I'm ahead. Completed the new building code adoption, working on strategic plan objectives, including making city processes and customer service improvements. Review and process new development zoning petitions in a timely manner. Restart the significant downtown building inspection rehab program with additional staff time available. Again, that's the limestone and the other historic buildings, going back and looking at those and making sure that they are maintaining their buildings. That was a program that we're working on. Unfortunately, it takes a long time to get them to comply because, we have to take them to adjudication if they don't follow through, or circuit court in some cases. So we've been not trying to be over, heavy-handed on it because it's, obviously concerned by business owners, but we are trying to make sure that, they are working forward towards getting compliance. Also reviewing the comprehensive land plan and make sure we are suggesting improvements. Proposing amendments to the existing zoning map to put the properties in the proper zoning classification, as well as comprehensive plan amendments with surrounding land uses. And then, as we had mentioned, review the South River Street area for future land use analysis and recommendations. That's a summary of our activities from last year and where we're going this year. If you have any questions.
Just real quick, why is the Moose Heart, or not Moose Heart, why is the Moose property still not incorporated?
The Moose Heart property, the vacant pieces are in, so that's this piece here along the lodge.
The lodge.
The lot, that's a good question.
They don't want to annex to the city because of our restrictions on liquor
And video gambling. I think they were concerned about the fees for the video gambling too.
and the video gaming fee.
It's surrounded and we could.
Right. Well, and that's where we've had several that were involuntary. And I know in our ward, we've actually cleaned up a lot in 2 because that was very smeally. But that part, I was always, did we have any agreements with Mooseheart from when the annexation went, or?
If you go back in the history of that one's interesting because they are actually on city water and sewer, and the baseball field, as we understand it, is actually on city electric. And there was some discussion when we allowed them to hook on to annex. There was actually an annexation agreement that was drafted at one point. Same thing for the Riverview Banquets property. And for whatever reason, those were not followed through. We still let them connect to our utilities, and here we are today.
But all that liquor tax and everything does not go to the city.
That's correct. So those are 2 areas, that we, they're both of those properties are basically, donut holes. The Moose and then the Riverview Banquets up in the north are both now completely surrounded. So they could be annexed at any time.
That wouldn't be a drain, would actually contribute revenue.
Right. They're both actually taxed in part with commercial land value.
And then 2 was, you talked about the gaming licenses. Has there been any more from any restaurants downtown recently?
Riverview Banquets actually is going to be, they've applied for their conditional use, and that's coming forward, I think on the...
Riverside Pizza.
Did you mean Riverside
That's what I meant,
Pizza?
Riverside Pizza, sorry, no, sorry.
Wow, quickest annexation.
They're coming forward later this month, so that's...
Joey just talked to me.
Yes, and me too. I've sent him the documentation.
They come and got the documents.
Yeah.
I got a sales call from a gaming company.
We're still waiting for Funway to actually get their application in, I believe. I haven't seen it come across my desk unless it's in police right now, so.
It's a voicemail.
The year rate is, I think, probably a good thing, but I mean, it has slowed down some of them. I mean, Riverview and Pal Joey, they moved to new locations, so we made them conform to
So Scott, refresh my memory, do we have money put aside, funds put aside for historic preservation? For the buildings, remember years ago we talked about it, that we're gonna survey the buildings and you know, give some direction to the building owners because these are historic buildings. Did we have money put aside, do you recall?
No, we've been doing that in-house with our in-house staff. Yeah,
Okay.
years ago, we actually did that through, we had a contractor that was doing some of that, but and that was before I got here, but then you know, we've been doing that internally with our
We
staff.
never offered any of these building owners any financial assistance.
We've had some of them actually apply for TIF grants. I mean, O'Brien's building, for example, is one that got it. Pal Joey's had some in the past. So, I mean, we have had some apply for TIF grants.
Okay.
For those.
I think originally when we started the Historic Preservation Commission, there was an outside company that we hired that I think did some of the survey work and put together some recommendations for them, but I think that was just initially when we started that, and then that went away.
Yeah, most of that program has been done in-house. We did have as part of that program when it was started, there was the idea that we would assist them with architectural services, those types of services, and I believe that was going to be covered at the time out of TIF, and reimbursed out of TIF.
And that may be what we used to do it to start, when we started that out, but then that kind of stopped.
So this just kind of slowed down a bit. We're going to start to pick it up again,
That's the
which
plan.
I think is pretty important to do.
Unfortunately, last year, we were planning to do that last year, but as you can see, the volume of permits, you know, our additional staff people were kind of tied up, so.
No more hailstorms.
Right.
Yeah.
Or flooding.
Thank you.
Hey, Scott. We had talked about it as part of the downtown, the replanning and everything, about form-based code. Do you think that's something you'll be able to look at this year, or is that?
We can look at it, yeah. I mean, I've looked at the Yorkville Ordinance. My initial conclusions on that is that it's a very cumbersome ordinance that they have adopted. I don't know that it follows a true spirit and intent of form-based zoning. It does to a certain extent, but it becomes very complicated because you're basically enforcing a zoning ordinance, separate zoning ordinance on each street with the way they've formatted that. So it you know, you can do it that way, but you know, now each property owner isn't necessarily going to know what they can do with their property unless they have a, you know, graduate degree or something like that. So it's you know, going through their ordinance, you know, and this is what we do for a living, and we were kind of like, boy, this is awfully complicated for what it really is. So, you know, we do have a form of form-based zoning in essence here with the, you know, build two lines, which is a typical, you know, thing that you have in the form-based zoning. But, you know, the other thing is that we have the Historic Preservation Commission that really looks at the forms themselves too. So, you know, they kind of will look at that and look at projects as we come forward too. But we'll take another look at it through the year and see if there's other ones that, you know, we could look at as other examples that might be worthwhile to consider.
Okay, thank you.
Just another quick question on, next to TIF 4, I'm going to ask him a question about that, but I was re-looking again at one of the larger parcels, which is the Wyrix houses on Main, where the developments were going to go in, the townhomes.
Yep.
Is that done now?
No, they have, the last conversation we had with them was, I think, in June of last year. So they kind of are the way they are. We were kind of holding off on some of this because we would like to get them under an annexation agreement, because then we can charge them development fees and things like that. But you know, that area was one of the next areas we were targeting for annexation before we kind of put a pause on everything. So, but you know, if we wait till the end of the year, maybe they'll have decided to move ahead on it this year yet. Well, you know, we'll see. So, but no, you know, we have not annexed those properties yet.
But the development, is that still in the?
It hasn't moved forward. It's still kind of there. They're in the time period, I think, before the development application expires. So it's like 180 days, you know, where they expire. So I think we're still within that time period, but we're getting near the end of it.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of questions about the empty houses.
Yep.
Because they're two, you know, big pieces of property that have vacant houses on them in clear path to the high school every day. So they're a prime place for a hangout.
And we're going to be spending a lot of money on Main Street to
Right.
just end there.
Yeah, and we can contact the county about code enforcement. Unfortunately, county isn't really geared up to deal with code enforcement. I mean, we're still dealing with some of the properties we've annexed, that they did not take care of also. So, it's,
Their code enforcement officer lives in Batavia.
well, he also has a lot larger geographical area to deal with than Batavia.
He lives right near there.
Yeah. Actually, my dad lives in Aurora, and he puts the blinders on sometimes.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Can I say a few words about, Scott has had a tremendous challenge going into the 2019 year. As you know, we had received a number of complaints from folks about how long it took to process permits and the amount of time sometimes that it took to schedule inspections. And we were so fortunate to be able to add that position to the department, and that helped a lot. But for the volume to go up in 1 year, 40%, even adding that person, it took a tremendous amount of coordination within the department, and everybody in the department did a really great job of stepping up. There weren't nearly as many people, and frankly, very few, if any, came to my attention in this past year. Also, the annexations in anticipation of the census happening this year was a really important accomplishment as well. I don't know how many people lived here back in 2010, but we missed 25,000 in the first count by hundreds of people.
Something like that.
Like
Narrow.
400 or something of that nature. Now, it was, we found that the census had missed an area that they should have counted, and so the city paid for a second census to be done, and that it put us over the 25,000 that brought us home rule. But that's why these things are really important to do. We haven't moved as far as we wanted to in terms of combining the community development and economic development departments at this point. I had hoped that by sometime in March that we would be advertising for the business development manager, economic development manager, but the one Washington Place complications caused by that have really kind of been a deterrent. But the other thing that has been a deterrent is we have had an incredibly large volume of economic development opportunities that are coming our way right now. And Chris and Anthony and Scott and Jeff and Joel and I and all of the different components of the team that approach these economic development opportunities have been very busy with that. But it's also been different knowing that we have combined these departments financially, but we are now combining these departments culturally, so that when we do go out and advertise and hire for this position, they're going to be feeling like they're coming on board to a community and economic development department. So we're already creating the culture, so I hope that will make that transition even easier. So thanks for all your hard work, Scott.
Thank you. Now we'll turn it over to Chris. Sure.
Anthony.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. I want to start out with kind of updating you on a couple of initiatives we talked about at the mid-year report, one of which is the Gateway Improvement Program grant that started this year. Alderman Callahan wanted me to bring in a nearby meeting a status update as to what grants we've issued and what might still be pending. So this information is on that. You know about the Gammon House grant that has not begun yet because the winter ensued and we didn't have all the permits in place, so that will begin this spring. That's essentially to reconstruct the parking lot around the Gammon House buildings. The 917 First Street, that's the Energy City Brewing. That was for a commercial sign. That's now been installed. Project's completed. 428 South Batavia Avenue, that's a two-story office building on the east side of the street. That's south of Main Street. That's to replace an existing sign. It's Frank Giampoli's law office building. Those projects are to include lighting and landscaping, most importantly, their freestanding sign. That's being delayed through the application process. And of course, 1335 South River Street, that's Funway. That project was completed. There was some parking lot landscaping work, as well as awnings, which have been installed. The next update is on the, you remember we talked about recruiting a data center. It's the type of use that's perfect for our community. And although it doesn't generate a lot of employment on site, it has a lot of multiplier effects throughout the community and nearby. And so we started looking at that, and that's what you have in front of you, this threefold that both Anthony as well as Griffin Price, our communications director, gave an awful lot of assistance in putting that together. And generally, it speaks to the city's advantages, we believe, competitive advantages in the area, which include that we own our own electric utility. As you know, data centers are high power users, and it can be as much as, once they've installed all the equipment, general operating costs, it could be as much as the highest expense they have on a regular basis. Again, they don't employ that many people on site, so labor may not be the case, although they generally employ occupations that have a high salary. We have good access to fiber network, low exposure to natural disasters, which is important when you're siting a data center. There are benefits in our building code that allow for that kind of use. We have a good area workforce, good healthcare and education systems, obviously, and we're well located for regional public transportation facilities. So what we've done, instead of just focusing on data centers, is we're now developing and will be presenting, I think as soon as perhaps next week at the COW, what we're calling interim policy, which is to recruit all office research and industrial type users to the city, focusing on really our targeted type enterprises. And so we've got the 4 criteria, which we're talking about now. The prospective development and business would have to meet at least 3 of those, and that's based on value, size, or value, the type of business, and we list several businesses there that are right in our ballpark, and employee count or predominant occupation within the site, and finally, what is the electric utility customer profile of the user. So the idea is to create an opportunity and also incentivize these type of businesses to come into Batavia. I want to talk a little bit about retail and industrial markets. And you'll recall, this would be the 3rd time that the economic development team has put together analytics with respect to our competing communities. The first was back in 2014 when we produced the business-friendly report, where we compared Batavia with other communities on aspects like taxes and time cost for permitting and various other things, vacancy rates, occupancy rates. So then we did it about 2.5 years ago at a mid-year report, and so I wanted to do it again this particular report. And our basis for information is CoStar. So first, turning to the retail submarket, which is mapped there, and that's through CoStar. They're calling that the Western East-West Corridor Retail Submarket. Just to show you real quickly, you've got about 56 million rentable square feet within the market itself. The average vacancy rate is 6.6%, and the average rent square foot is just over $18. So I wanted to put the submarket against the St. Charles Industrial Market, Geneva Market, and Batavia's market. I'm sorry, retail. And, there's some spikes, obviously, you'll notice them. So it's been fairly volatile in Batavia these last few years. We've lost in this time, over the last 3 years, Sam's, Aldi, Bye Bye Baby, but we've also added Crash Champions, Sierra Trading, Riverside Pizza, Pub, Dollar Tree. The Sam's Club is the big spike in 2000, it's like January, February 2018. Pal Joey's obviously is now in play. So, we've gotten some bad news with respect to vacancies and in large amounts, but we have rebounded a little bit. But that explains why our vacancy rate exceeds the sub-market and the other two Tri-Cities. Another reason our vacancy rate is probably a little higher is just the dynamic of the town, and particularly in the downtown. So with respect to Batavia's downtown, there's a total of 380,000 square feet within 47 buildings. The available space for lease presently is 51,800 for retail space, which puts us at a 13.6% vacancy rate in the downtown. And I mapped the downtown there, as you can see. The asking price per square foot in our downtown is 14 and a quarter. Up in the upper right, that tells you about what period of time 50% of your available leasable space will be rented on average, the probability. So you're looking at 9 months in downtown Batavia. Turning to Geneva, as you know, that is a large downtown retail center. When we went out and looked at where a lifestyle center would be, in fact, when I was in Geneva, we used downtown Batavia as a lifestyle center comparative with respect to the margin area. The next one over would have been Donata Square in Wheaton. So there's a whole lot of space in downtown Geneva. Out of 133 buildings, their available space for leases actually exceeds what's in Batavia, but because they have so much space available all in, their vacancy rate is only 7.9%. Obviously, the asking price is more in Geneva, and it's because of really mass. I mean, you have a large shopping center. We've talked about this before. You compare that with Batavia, rent rates, probability for rent. There are vacancies in Geneva off and on, but they don't last very long because people want to be where other retailers are. So that explains, I think, the shorter period of 50% of probability of leasing is only in 4 months. St. Charles is somewhere in between. Generally speaking, from 7th to 7th is how they define the downtown in St. Charles. 525,000 square feet over 72 buildings. There's about 41,000 square foot. Their vacancy rate's only 7.8%. Their asking price, though, is $20.57. That's high. I think it's largely skewed by the new downtown First Street concentration between 31 and over to 7th Street. Oh, and they're renting at 4.5 months, 50% of their space. Vacancy rates, both historical and forecasted. So you can see that the vacancy rate in Batavia is, it's starting to level off, and this is just in the downtown. Market rent, that also is climbing back to where, but then they're perceiving it to drop off. And I believe that's a function of retail generally. Whether you're in a downtown district or whether you're out in Randall Road, the rent is going to be a function of supply and demand. And if your vacancy slows down and there's less people that want to be there, they're going to have rent that'll be decreased. In terms of industrial, this is a different submarket by name, and it's called the Central Kane Dupage Industrial Retail Real Estate Market. And that runs from about, just west of Lombard, all the way out actually through DeKalb County. And it's centrally located from east and west perspective in Kane County. It does not include the I-88 corridor. It does not include 30. And it's primarily along 38 and 64 as you run out from the Wheaton area. This compares 5 communities, Batavia included. What I'm always stunned by is the amount of industrial space that Batavia has always had in terms of the other communities, not counting Aurora and Elgin and Kane County. There's an awful lot of square footage of industrial building under roof in Batavia. You have 196 buildings, over 10 million square feet of space. That compares with Geneva, which has less than 4 million square feet and only 51 buildings. You can read the rest out by reading them, but the vacancy rate in Batavia appears higher than you would expect, but that's because it was measured in the last quarter, and at that time, we didn't have full space either at the 1250, or I'm sorry, the 1100 North Verdant, and also the whole Party Light building had not been permanently occupied. There was a lease month to month for the southerly 300,000 square feet of Party Light, but in terms of long-term leases, 3 or 5 years or better, that was considered vacant. But we recently had the rest of it rent out. I want to quickly mention West Chicago because I'll touch base on that in a minute. In West Chicago's Dupage Business Park itself, there's 5 existing buildings that total more than 1.9 million square feet. There's 4 buildings that are under construction that are 1.47 million square feet, and there's 2 additional buildings at 425,000 square feet. So what's interesting is that 3.8 million square feet have been built at the Dupage Park, 308 million square feet of space. Of the 308 million total, 3 million alone has been built at the Tech Park in 2019. There are 2 other buildings, one in 2016 is the DS Containers, and that's 550,000 square feet. So that's only still less than 6 years or 5 years difference. And then a submarket is given as well. So the average in the submarket is 6.8%. So we do exceed that, but again, that is not reflective of the actual data, which it does not include the property on Kingsland, the former Party Light. So in terms of 2019 industrial developments, the 1850 building that we previously mentioned was completed in the 4th quarter. It's 150,000 plus square feet. We do have one tenant now in the easterly, 50,000 square feet. Winsland Industries, they primarily make hoods for ranges. They had moved from Brewster Park Development, Industrial Park rather, in Streamwood, I believe it is. That was listed when we spoke at the 2018 annual meeting that would be a designated construction priority, and with a lot of help from our building department, doing plan review and doing the inspections, they met that goal. They were hoping to come in at 4Q 2019, and they did complete it, and that was pretty ambitious, but again, that in large part is from the help of our community development department. 1100 North Verdant, that was designated as a 2019 occupancy priority back when we met in the annual meeting in 18. That's now fully occupied. It's 102,000 square feet. Focus Logistics was the initial tenant that was 62,000, and Power Packaging now is renting 40,000 square feet. Also, with respect to 2019 industrial development, that 1225 Douglas, that is a proposed building of 150,000 square feet. That plan review has not been submitted for formal permitting, but this is the piece they've got on CoStar as a marketing piece. That's the building they're hoping to build. It's a 9-acre site right across from the 1200, 1250. There is a building that is occupied or will be occupied, 36,000 square feet at 1475 Nagel. That's where Primarco is moving to. And there's also a building just south of it that is still under construction but not completed and not yet committed any one lease. The real good news we can report on the industrial developments for 2019 is that the long-awaited tenancy has been committed for all 500,000 square feet at the old Party Light building. Colony Display had been in there, as I said, on a month-to-month basis, but now they're on a longer-term lease. So that's 300,000 square feet. That's the southerly end of the building, the actually shorter ceiling height. And then the northerly 200,000 square feet, which was the addition. That lease has been signed, but according to the broker, the ownership does not want to reveal the name publicly until they are ready. Finally, industrial rental rates. I think the way this seems skewed with Geneva, the red, is that Geneva has, as you saw, much fewer industrial buildings, and with the exception of some of the buildings near Stevens and where the downtown rail used to come through, like Burgess Norton, for instance, almost all of their industrial buildings are new. They date, I think the oldest one dates back only to 1996, the Continental Building, and every building thereafter off of Averill Road is newer. So what that means is that translates as a higher star rating building, and their space rents more. But we're right around the median. As you can see, our rent is actually higher than North Aurora. It's pretty much on market with West Chicago and the far submarket. This is probably leasing, comparing the communities I mentioned just a few minutes ago. So you can take a good look at that. Hold on, I'm looking for construction starts. Did that?
Oh, you missed it. You skipped it before.
Oh, good.
That.
Thank you, because this is, I think, an interesting slide. West Chicago, you can see what's going on there, and I talked about it a few minutes ago. In terms of what Batavia's got, Batavia in the purple, if you see in 2016, that is that's the 1200, 1250 Douglas that we showed. That's fully occupied. In 18, that's the Redant building, 1100 Redant. And then the end of 18, that's the construction start for the 1850 Fabian Parkway, where Winsland is at. But just look at the green, and that's West Chicago. The 2015, that's DS Containers. That's a 550,000 square foot building. But then all of the other buildings after 2018 are in the Dupage, formerly Tech Park, Dupage Business Park. And there's a reason for that. And it's why I'm going to be bringing together this incentive program, because in many cases, these buildings, and there's quite a bit more land actually that is available, about 170 acres that's available for sale, and then there's probably close to 140 more acres that are under contract where the building hasn't been built or proposed yet. And what West Chicago has done is created this joint action with a number of other taxing bodies, and it amounts to 85% of your tax bill is comprised of participating taxing districts, wherein they've all agreed to give 50% of their property tax back over a 10-year period to incentivize these developments. And the proof's in the pudding. It's really working. And I mean, I told you how many proposed buildings there are and how many existing buildings. It's phenomenal how much area is going to be up in building and how much has already been constructed. So here's the probability of leasing. Batavia is at about 5.5 months, which is pretty much on par. I don't think we're behind. Industrial, again, Batavia is very competitive. But this thing that's happened now in the last few years with West Chicago is really skewing the program. Anthony's going to present the next couple slides. And then we have one more slide on TIF grant.
Very true. Alrighty, so I thought this would be a great opportunity just to provide an update as to what I've been up to in addition to my full load of everyday work and projects. Those of you who may or may not know, I have been a student since October 2019 with the Economic Development Institute through Oklahoma University, where they have their campus in Oklahoma. October 2019, I had an opportunity to go for a full week to take some extensive courses in economic development, which includes a couple, which is economic development credit analysis, which is dealing with the financials of economic development, as well as real estate development and reuse. In addition to that, I did not stop after completing the Colorado courses and maintain a good score there. I jumped right into a couple 8-week courses, and you're able to take one course in this case, I took one course at a time because that's what time allotted. So for my first course that started in November of 2019 was Business Retention and Expansion. That particular course was, I believe, a lot of what we talk about in here in the city council and the CAL meetings, and even the staff projects that we focus on. deal with a lot of business retention and expansion and trying to implement a program of that nature, as well as the other course that I completed as of March 9th of this year, online entrepreneurship and small business development strategies. Both of those have a little bit of overlap, but again, very extensive courses. And primarily, the purpose of updating you all today is to just let you know the importance and appreciation that I have for being in such a tough, challenging, but yet rewarding program. This is a certificate program, and I needed 117 hours to complete this. And in May, first week of May 2020, it is a plan to take my last 5 courses in Austin, Texas, along with graduation after completing those courses. At that point, I would have met all of the requirements, maintained a very good score, grade-wise, all while, working each day with the staff and staying on point with my job as well. So a lot of time and effort went into this, but I am truly excited because I have an opportunity to take a lot of this knowledge that I am acquiring to eventually, pour that knowledge into what we're trying to do here in the city of Batavia. So quite frankly, I'm excited to get started with a lot of the different exciting projects. As Laura mentioned, we have the community development and economic development program coming together eventually, and I want to be part of that movement. However, I can be a resource to that. But last but not least, I do want to say that Chris Aston has truly been a mentor to me as I've been, engaging in economic development and getting my feet wet with the whole idea of what economic development is and how we want to apply it to the city of Batavia. So I have to definitely say thank you to Chris Aston for giving me the opportunity to be mentored and to continue learning. In addition, I've gotten a lot of assistance and a lot of mentorship from Scott Bunin and the community development team on a lot of different things. So I'm excited to just really use the knowledge that I'm acquiring and to see what we can come up with together as a team with economic development, community development, and making our community just warm, welcome, and exciting. So 2019 conferences and trade shows. These are some of the things we've attended in 2019, and we've also had a couple other things that we've attended this year, particularly the 18th Annual Commercial Real Estate Forecast Conference, which was January of 2020. And then we also had an opportunity to attend the 2020 Multi-Chambered Economic Outlook Luncheon and Business Expo in February, which was in Downers Grove. Now, Scott Bunin, in his presentation, he mentioned, I believe it was the ICSC. That is also something that we're planning on attending as well. So we're really going to be looking and seeing what type of programs we can attend, trade shows, conferences this year that will really pour into what we're trying to do here in Batavia. So I will turn this back over to Chris.
Thanks, Anthony. I was just thinking, when I graduated from that EDI, I actually was one of the speakers at the graduation ceremony, and I said one word. I said plastics. That's how long it's been since I took that course. Mr. O'Brien mentioned, what are we doing on some of these downtown buildings? And it's so timely because I didn't want to talk much about grants this year because we always showed pictures, and the fire department guy always, Chief Dikey, says enough already with the pictures, So, but I did want to show this one because this is a fabulous project. John Happel bought the old Stas's building, which was literally uninhabitable. I mean, if you know it, if you ever went upstairs, you wouldn't be here now. So I don't know that anybody did. But if you look at that building, if you know what it looked like, this is the ground floor that is in your, I guess, stage, left. You're looking at the left side. And I'm not showing all of it. I actually did a film walking around, but if you watched it, you would get motion sickness. I'm not very good at that. But if you look to your left, this is from the back of the building, looking towards South Batavia Avenue. That case there, which is a really cool cabinet work, was rebuilt. It's an antique case. That room to the left, that's a separate treatment room. His wife, as you remember, is going to open this kind of art therapy type business there. And what he did with that's tin ceiling up there, that's kind of a hanging ceiling, that's tin, that's been rehabbed. What he did with the stone is just unbelievable. I mean, you really have to see it. Now, he has indicated that he'd be happy to have somebody, anyone that wants to come through, but I thought we'd wait till, when he does the ribbon cutting. I hope you can make it then. So there's a chandelier in there, gives a little style. The picture on the right is the front of the building, which the city helped pay for. Those commercial windows, those are all new. Those gooseneck lights. I'm standing there, I borrowed Alan's coat for that shot on the... So, hold on now, take it easy. So we're gonna do this, I think. This one is not so bad. You'll be able to stomach this. Wait, hold on, wait, time out. What is going on here, Anthony? How do I make this thing grow? That's what she don't say that. We'll leave it at that. So you're walking through the front room. This is the apartment he built on that's facing Batavia Avenue. So it's all one big room that is the bedroom area, and then it's connected as you come around the corner here. This is the main room, the living room, if you will, and dining area. So we rebuilt all those windows, historic integrity. That was a really cool looking radiator, if you saw it. Then he appointed the kitchen. Behind that door there, as you're passing, is the up and top washer and dryer for laundry. All granite. Really well appointed apartment, right in the downtown. And here again, you go around. Thought I'd show you the bathroom facilities. That again is me, and for scale purposes, the bathtub. You know what a toilet looks like. I didn't want to put that in there. But anyway, so, I'm sorry I didn't make it bigger because I was supposed to do that, but I don't know what happened. But anyways, I can't wait for you guys to see this. The back room is actually even cooler. Isn't it, Jeff? All the walls in the back are all the original stone, and there's a separate bedroom that's enclosed by itself and a door and whatnot, and then there's a kitchen and a bigger living room. So I think they'll rent at close to $1.75 or so a square foot. So that's a premium apartment, and it's downtown living. You can't beat it. But it was about a $500,000 event when all was said and done after acquisition. But this council approved $40,000 over 2 phases, and you should be applauded for that because he's very appreciative of it. So I think that's all. Oh yeah, right. I got that going. There you go. Okay. Are there any questions?
I was just going to ask what the status of any activity or bites at West Town.
There has not been any. It's disappointing. To be honest with you, the building I thought we had the best opportunity was the 812 building, which is Ron Link's building. That may go a different direction, but that is about 27,000+ square feet. And I know it's available now. He hasn't publicly put on the market per se, but he's talking about it. We thought we'd be able to do something with the tear down and rehab of the building on Mallory, the dual and dual building, but apparently they're just going to let that tear down on its own. So it's unfortunate. So no, there really hasn't been anything to speak of, and we obviously had the TIF. We also talked about on Walnut Street, the old greenhouse site. We've actually had a couple nibbles at that, coming in with townhomes.
Right.
But nothing's actually been formally presented, and I don't know that any sale has ever consummated.
Did we only have the 2 projects then that Mike Spillane did?
We did Mike Spillane's project at 125, I believe was 225 South Harrison.
Right.
And did he do 2 buildings?
He did 2 of
Yeah.
them.
That's right.
So part of what we want to do in this coming year is do a map of our extended downtown area and identify all of the potential areas of redevelopment so that someone who is interested in doing development in Batavia can imagine the possibilities in all the different areas that are possibilities because we keep getting that phone call where someone will be contacting us about a certain parcel of land that they're interested in having discussions about ideas, what they might want to do there. And then when they hear about all of the other areas around our downtown and near downtown that also might be places where they can execute on that idea. It kind of gave us the idea that we should definitely have a tool like that. So I think that will assist us in identifying more opportunities.
I forgot to mention also, this year, the city budgeted money for going outside to recruit a hotel in town. So that Scott and I have talked about getting that underway.
The reason I brought up the West Town is because we're, I think, 6 years into the TIF now, right? And if we're not doing anything with it, I think we need to figure out something creatively to either make it work or go away, instead of it sit dormant and nothing really happening on it. And that money's been cut off from the school districts and the other bodies for a time being. And if nothing's happening with it, I think we need to kind of think what we're going to do with it and what the focus and strategy is.
Well, I haven't looked at, I think there's been market increase in the assessed value, because I remember the first year, it was about $19,000 in TIF, where there had not been any buildings, with the exception of the rehab, although it didn't add much square feet, which does, but it added value because we became a multifamily. It was a, what do you call that? It was a,
And also with the complete reconstruction of Main Street, that might also be an attraction to folks to want to bring something of a higher use into that area.
Our hope is that the property at 126 Mallory, that's been the code enforcement, if he has revised plans in here, we're hopeful that he's going to move ahead and actually do the work that he wants to do. If he does, then that will create a substantial increase in the assessed valuation for that property. So we're hopeful that that will be at least one project in that TIF district.
One real catalyst, if and when it occurs, is the demolition and reuse of the Pedersen property, the old gas station site. But it's not on the market, and he's not interested in selling it. As you know, the two other largest buildings in terms of ground cover are the school district's maintenance building and the aforementioned Ron Link's building. I'm not sure, I've been by there lately. I don't know that the Elms is,
That may be one that comes into play, and I think that will definitely be before Link's building comes up, because youth baseball just moved into the Link's
he's
building.
renting it out
I don't
to
think
them.
that's going away anytime soon.
No.
The Elms is not.
It's the last property in the
They're in the
TIF.
It is in the TIF.
Okay.
I believe that's in the TIF.
It is, it's
I
the
think it is
most
after that.
westerly property in the TIF.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
You know, Chris, just one thing, just, we had in here about 2 weeks ago, a industrial user who's been in Batavia for about 20 years, the aluminum casting company.
It Cast
Yes.
Aluminum Solutions.
Yeah,
You know, those guys spoke so highly of Batavia and of electric utility. And I know you've been out looking to get industrial users. You might use them kind of as a tool to.
It's a good idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. We had the downtown, when we did a video a few years back, where we talked about the downtown. It's still on our website. But some of the powerful stuff in there were the testimonials. You remember Linda B. from Export Importers?
Yes.
So that'd be great. And, you know, they took another space,
Yes.
additional space in that 1237 Douglas
Right.
building, so.
And so, I mean, and they couldn't speak enough about our electric utility, which everyone seems to want to run into the ground, but we do have a good electric utility.
We do, and they're a
So-
high demand user. That's one of our higher users, and so they
Right.
benefit from our rate system that, you know, rewards and attracts expansion and new construction with high electric demand.
So, just an idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to say a few words about Chris and Anthony, Anthony has worked tirelessly at pursuing the certification program. He's gone on the most aggressive schedule that he could and seamlessly kept up with all the other responsibilities that he has, and has established himself as an integral part of the community development and economic development team that we are forming at this time. And Chris, I really just can't say enough about what you lack in technical skills. You make up with in leaps and bounds in terms of both your knowledge of economic development and also your creativity. And if Anthony didn't say it, I was going to say what a great mentor that you have been to him as he is, just beginning on his course of gaining knowledge in the area of economic development. So thank you for how instrumental that you have been in all of that.
Going through that coursework and such. Secondly, not comparable. Such a broad spectrum of information they lay on you. Just delivery cost.
And not to mention that he received the highest marks possible in all of those courses as well.
Well, I mean, Anthony, with all your newly acquired knowledge, I hope you're not planning on leaving us anytime.
He's going to have one city administrator wrapped around his ankle if he tries.
We got a giant bungee cord for 2 in the office. You can't get too far.
Did see him picking out some very nice bonds.
No, I'm happy to be here, and I'm going to be here for a very long time.
Well, we're
Thanks.
definitely happy to have you, for sure.
Okay, next up is project status, local prosecution on trial for DUI cases.
Yes, why don't I start with that? We, last year, were approached by a local attorney, Peter Bew, about engaging his services for prosecuting our DUI cases. He currently does this for the municipalities of Geneva and North Aurora and Montgomery. And Chief Ewell communicated with each one of those municipalities, and they've been very happy with the services that Attorney Bew has provided. Attorney Bew conducts periodic DUI prosecution training with officers in various municipalities. His part of what he is very proud of is his high conviction rate that he is able to get on these cases, as well as the amount of fines that end up being levied in these cases, but also he tries to minimize the number of times that our police officers have to show up in court. And so by both increasing the revenue and decreasing our costs, and because signing the memorandum of understanding with him to engage his services, it's on a case-by-case basis. And so if, for whatever reason, we wish to disengage his services, then we simply provide him notice that we won't be sending any more cases to him. So it's a very low risk for us. And so we would like to begin using his services. So I just wanted to put you on notice that rather than have the Kane County State's Attorney prosecute these cases, that we were going to engage the services of Attorney Peter Bew, and I can report back on what has been the experience with that. Yes.
And I had one question that came up. What's the standard rate that the Kane County District Attorneys or State's Attorney charges the city back on those cases?
They don't charge us anything.
Okay.
So this is a difference that we're going to be paying $275, but the value that he is providing to us is that we will be getting more money back on the penalties, and we will be spending less on sending officers to court.
And I was going to say, if you just develop a simple matrix for that,
Yes.
so we can see, okay, before we got in $5,000 a year because of letting the state's attorney do it, and now if we get $25,000 a year and it only costs us 10, we're going to make money.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
That's what I want to see.
Sure.
That would be
Out of that
interesting to see how that
comparison, I
works
think
out.
that's what I'd like to see or be able to show the council.
Be happy to report on that. That should be a pretty easy map.
So there are no other, legal pitfalls or implications we need to be concerned with?
None whatsoever. no. He has an excellent reputation.
And I think from what I read out of the memo, it sounds like he also spends time with our police department to try to cue them in on what they have to have or what they need to be prepared for, both in presenting that ticket and testifying so that they can get the convictions.
And Kevin was pretty positive about it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So Kevin would have looked into any other issues that.
Oh, absolutely.
Unforeseen.
Okay, then moving on, the entryway signs, we have re-engaged with the engineering firm who was providing us with the drawings that we would then use for the RFP for the entryway signs so they will be updating those drawings utilizing the new designs that Griffin presented to all of you in a variety of materials so that we can decide what type of materials that we'd like to move forward with, because they'll provide some ballpark estimate of what those should cost. And we expect to bring that back to you either on March 24th or the first committee of the whole meeting in April. Regarding the bike share, we did have a meeting where we looked at potential sites for the bike share racks. While everybody thought the South Plaza here of City Hall was good for one location, there wasn't really consensus on where a second location should be. So we'll need to have some further discussion on that. But more importantly, we had a very short turnaround time with the services agreement that they provided to us. They provided to us 1 week, and they needed the order for the bikes within the next 2 weeks. It all seemed a little bit rushed. And when you read the agreement, it does not provide for what Mayor's greatest concern was, and that was making sure that the city would not have any liability for injuries or damages that would be caused by the users. So I've contacted Colony because the matter isn't addressed in the services agreement, and I did get a very quick response from their internal attorney, and she said that she would provide me with both a revised services agreement and also a revised user waiver that would include indemnification for the city. So I'm just awaiting those documents, but based on the short timelines that we were given for, signing the agreements and getting the order in, they made it seem like it was imperative to do those things by the end of February in order to have the bicycles for the rollout in June. I think this issue is too important for us to kind of rush those decisions. So I'll bring those documents back to you when I get the revised versions from Colony. But just wondered what your thoughts were on the South Plaza here being a good location for the first bike rack.
Just with the insurance again, they're going to get us a copy of their insurance that have us listed as additionally insured.
That was not in the original agreement. What the original agreement, the services agreement that they sent us, it just says under insurance, both parties will have a policy.
They're going to get that to us now.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's what I put in there as both an indemnification clause and show us insurance that is at least $1 million per incident and $2 million in the aggregate, naming the city as an additional insured. Yeah.
I don't have a problem with plaza out here being used.
Well, I guess my concern with the plaza out here is I also think of the electric parking that never gets used. It's a little out of the way. It's not extremely out of the way. I think by the Depot Museum might be more accessible. It's a destination. Nobody comes to City Hall as a destination. Yeah, they're crossing over you do. Mayor does. And then people crossing over the river, they're already on a bike or something. It just doesn't seem like the best place to be.
I understand what you're saying. One of the things that we were talking about is we had it at the South Plaza, but we were like, we want the second place to be much more visible. And that's answering exactly the concern that you just brought up, is the depot perhaps gives it more visibility.
How about where we have Storehenge?
Yeah, that has also been mentioned. Because that would catch all of the Wilson Street traffic. We were hoping to get on either Wilson Street or on Batavia Avenue because of the high traffic volumes, even if at least people would know we have a bike share program because they drove by and they saw that. So more to come on that. We have the Small Business Forum on March 18th that is in collaboration with the Chamber of Commerce and with Main Street. And it is an overview of our incentive programs. So that's Wednesday, March 18th from 8 o'clock to 9:30. It's at City Council Chambers. And we have the following confirmed speakers: Mike Ongram from the Fox Valley Entrepreneurship Center, Harriet Parker from the Small Business Development Center, Frank Priori from SCORE, Chris Aston will talk about the city's incentives, and then Heidi Files from Energy City Brewing, recently named the best new brewery in the state of Illinois, will be here to talk about how she has benefited from all of these in establishing and growing her small business in the city of Batavia, which is getting to be less small all the time.
When is
We have
that?
graduated from small.
When is that?
That is March 18th, next Wednesday morning from 8 o'clock to 9:30. So I invite any of you to join us that morning if you would be interested. Green Night at the Movies is on March 21st. You can see the poster right behind you. It is starts at 6 o'clock p.m. They have their Eco Expo, and then at 7 o'clock, they will be showing the movie Current Revolution, which will be followed by a panel discussion. And Gary Holm is going to take part in that panel discussion. We were contacted a couple of weeks ago by Kane County Division of Transportation, Ryan Peterson, who is the gentleman who was talking to us about the bike share program. And the county is starting a program to encourage more and more school-aged children to ride their bikes to school. But recognizing that not every kid can afford a bike, he is contacting schools in Kane County to participate in a bike drive. And he contacted the city because the HC Storm is going to be the site for where the bike drive is going to take place. And Ryan asked if we could make some signs so that people know where to drop off the bikes on the property. So the Public Works Sign Shop made a couple of signs that are bike drive, bike drop off signs. And I figured that not only could we use this for the bike drive that they're doing there, but the Batavia Bicycle Commission every year does a bike drive where they also collect bikes that they can then fix and redistribute. The bike drive for HC Storm School is going to be on March 14th, and people can drop off their used bikes from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. So I think, if you're spring cleaning in your garage and there's that bike that you just never use, bring it on over to HC Storm School and let a kid put it to good use. Also this Friday, the American Public Works Association Chicago area is going to be giving an award to the wastewater treatment plant project. As you recall, we were recently given the award by the Fox Valley region. Now, this is the Chicagoland region that encompasses most of northern Illinois. By receiving this award, we are automatically nominated for the National APWA award in this category. So it's really pretty exciting, and we're really proud to be receiving that nomination. Let me see, there was a couple of public works items that I wanted to cover. Yeah, the plans for the 2020 sidewalk program have been finalized, and the roadway patching. I just wanted to remind people that they can go to our website, and at the bottom of the homepage, they can click on City Maps. And when you click on City Maps, you can see what streets are being resurfaced and patched and what sidewalks are being worked on, as well as what our larger capital improvement projects are. And Public Works has pages for each of those, and Griffin is working with Public Works on even improving those and making those more interesting for people to interact with. And there's one more item that I wanted to cover. I'd probably be remiss if I didn't mention anything about the ways that our workplace is preparing for coronavirus, should that become an issue in terms of should there be a school closure, or if we have a high number of people who are off from work. For one thing, IT has already been working on a program for a deployment of laptops with VPN connection, so that if there are employees who need to stay home in a quarantine situation, but who are not so ill that they cannot work and are in critical positions, that this would allow them to be in a work from home situation. So that we should be able to deploy that program within the next 7 days for about approximately 16 employees. The other thing is that we are planning to be more flexible in our sick leave policies that we have. In the event that someone is required to be in a quarantine status, or they are needed to care for a member of their family who is in quarantine status, we want to make sure that our employees do not experience extreme financial hardship by potentially being weeks without a source of income. And therefore, it is not our normal policy that we would allow vacation time to be used, but we are going to allow employees to use vacation time if their sick time is depleted and they don't want to go into an unpaid status. And furthermore, if it is a situation that is a coronavirus-related absence, that we would allow them to go into a negative status if they have depleted all possible paid time off. I think that these are extremely exigent circumstances and policies that one would ordinarily not contemplate implementing. We have to think about in this instance. The most important thing is that people who are experiencing symptoms do not come to work, because that's when we really are at risk of depleting our workforce, and especially in our public safety positions and our public works positions. It is essential that we maintain as healthy a workforce as possible. And in the fire service, where they are interacting potentially with, they may be the first ones to respond when somebody has the coronavirus. We do have policies in place and training that is ongoing, and Randy has daily briefings from all the local and state and federal levels on what fire personnel and EMTs need to be doing with regard to coronavirus. So I just wanted to give you an update on those issues.
So Laura, with that, with the federally, nationally, it's an existential threat, economic threat.
Yes.
So are we contemplating as a community, as a city, of reaching out to our United States representatives and senators to contact the federal government, because the federal government's going to have to start opening up their purse strings somehow
Absolutely.
nationwide.
Yes.
And not just statewide, but, to the communities also. Just for communities have to continue to operate.
So today, J.B. Pritzker played the national emergency. He declared the national
Right.
emergency, and so that will prompt the flow of federal assistance and the ability to engage National Guard should that be necessary. But Mayor can attest that the city of Chicago has really taken a leadership role in coordinating communication of the very latest information. They are sponsoring periodic calls where hundreds of people can call in to the conference call, which is highly unusual. And I was on that call this morning, and it worked flawlessly. And just excellent information is being presented. And so it is like opposite of the experience that we had with Legionnaires. So I want to assure you that in this case, the state, federal, and local health officials all seem to be doing a very good job of getting information where it needs to be, even down to the local level.
Yeah, I was part of it a week ago Sunday. On Sunday night, they had a call that was, the technology, they got overloaded with calls, and the technology kind of had a few moments of dismay, but it was okay. But Mayor Lightfoot was on and said that she had already talked with the federal government and Midway and O'Hare Airport. She was going to get funding to have more people there to kind of watch what was happening there and be ready to do any actions. And so, then they as Laura said, they were going to embark upon a program doing night in the suburbs on an ongoing basis as to whether there was suddenly a big flourish or whether it seemed like the disease was kind of subsiding. And so we're all going to be subject to those reports from the best medical minds out there, supposedly, on a moment by moment. So I agree with Laura. This is being very well handled on a regional basis, and we all seem to have been brought into the conversation very early on, and everybody seems to be reacting accordingly.
Well, we do have the first one now in Kane County, the first instance, so potential for growth now. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Now, not that we have that it's going to grow, but that we're prepared for it.
Yes. I guess one of the best sources of news today was that one of the best sources of news today was that the private lab companies are going to be prepared within the next day or so. Quest Laboratory and I forget LabCorp are going to be able to provide the testing, which is huge because right now there are only 3 state labs, but you know how many LabCorp and Quests there are. That will cover the geography. So you probably could expect that there will be an uptick in positive tests just because more people are being tested.
Just keep washing your hands.
Yes. I guess the most important message is all of those things that they tell you to do to avoid the cold and flu, start actually doing them. Wash your hands all the time. Don't touch your face.
I've been coughing for a week, so.
Any others?
So I was going to bring this forward. I don't know if it's doable or not, but driving around on Randall Road the other day, the plastic bags on Randall Road was abysmal. I mean, it was just, they were everywhere in the median.
Let's just get rid of
So
them.
I was wondering if we as a city can legislate the use of paper bags at the grocery stores. We have that at Trader Joe's. We have Berkeley, who doesn't use any plastic at all. They use cardboard boxes. If we can, anyone else, Jewel, anybody else to just have them not use plastic bags. They're everywhere you go. It's fouling the earth now. They can't do anything with the bags. So if there's something we can do as a community, and I don't know if
Would anyone join Mike in that?
There is some draft ordinance in the works from the Fox Valley Sustainability Network that I happen to be a part of. And so we're working on a toolkit for municipalities that want to follow the success of
Perfect.
Evanston, Woodstock, Oak Park, and the city of Chicago that have all enacted either bag fees or bag bans. And so we're working on this toolkit and then working with environmental commissions to kind of beta test the toolkit for us. So the Batavia Environmental Commission is working on beta testing it for us, and the St. Charles Natural Resource Commission, and so that will be coming before you soon.
good. Thank you.
Elliot?
Yeah, I was hoping actually Gary was going to be here tonight, but even Rahab has left. So I guess, Laura, I'll ask you. Some months back, I had a resident of the Third Ward contact me and ask a question, in which I then got into a larger conversation with some of the other parents at HC Storm, the very same one that we were talking about just minutes ago. And particularly this was about the crossing of Western Avenue at Thorson, Navajo, trying to get that into a four-way stop sign with striping for crossing, allowing the kids to go to the park on the west side and get the other way when it's walk to school in the morning and the afternoon as well. Another alderman joined me, I forget who, but I think there were actually a couple that were interested in that. We actually brought up a couple of other intersections as well, Western at Wilson, Main at Millview, for the crossing intersections that are going north-south, where we kind of have either dead-end sidewalks or partial striping on one that just kind of abruptly ends. And so I wanted to get in.
Western and Wilson and
So you have Western at Wilson, and on the west side of that T intersection running north-south, there's like this dead-end sidewalk. If you go to Main at Millview, you have a T intersection, and you have partial striping on the west side running north-south. And then at Thorson and Navajo, again, my original ask was to get that to be a four-way stop sign, not a two-way stop sign, because we have the Brayburn Park on the west side with that whole Brayburn neighborhood where a lot of kids are living and needing to get over to school. And my request was to get that to at least be a three-way striped crossing, because the curbs are not cut on the east side of that intersection running north-south. So I was looking to get an update on that. It's been some time, haven't seen anything come up, so I wanted to bring that back up again.
okay, I'll follow up on that.
Joe?
Tuesday night was a really long discussion. I wasn't here for part of that. I have gone back and watched the video several times and made several pages of notes. I have had communication with Roman and Kevin on options. One option is to make a motion to reconsider the vote on Resolution 20-43-R, extending the TIF. Another option is to just wait until Monday night and vote no. A third option that I like better, I think with what I saw in the video of last Tuesday's meeting, there were a number of items that were presented for the first time I hadn't heard about in previous meetings and other research, and nobody questioned some of the things that came up. And it felt rushed. It's too big a decision, I think, to go on that short a meeting with some questions that are hanging out there. So on Tuesday, or on Monday night, when Dan is here, I intend to make a motion to return that legislation back to committee. And I just want to let everybody know that tonight.
Okay, do you have the questions that you want to answer to get them out there so we can get answers to them?
I will. And like I said, I've got 2 pages and I will get those put out there. I will send an email out probably Thursday.
Okay.
To everybody.
I just want to make sure
that
that
they know what the questions are and some of the concerns that when you piece together different parts of conversations that happened, because a question would come from one person, you'd get an answer, you'd get another question that would kind of steer the conversation in another direction, and it might steer it back the other way. You stop and put those pieces in a straight line, and there's a lot of questions that come up out of that. And it was, once you stop bouncing back and forth, and you take that hour and a half or 2 hour video and play it for about 6 hours, rewinding and taking notes and putting it back and forth and piecing things together, I've got some questions and concern. Okay? I just wanted everybody to know that, so you're not surprised Monday night when I do that.
Okay. Anybody else with any others? Okay. Next up then, we'll need a motion to go into executive session to talk
So
about
moved.
probable
Second.
litigation. Motion by O'Brien, second by Knopp. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we are now going to go into